You're listening to God, Law, and Liberty with David Fowler and Gary Humble. We're putting culture on a collision course with the truth.
Hi, I'm David with the Family Action Council of Tennessee, and as you can tell from the screen and from the introduction, actually, audibly, that Gary is not with us today, and we miss having Gary on the show today, but I wanted to go ahead and continue because there are a number of important things that are going on, and we're actually evaluating our formatting, how best to do this, but we didn't want to disrupt things while we're working that out. So in any event, I want to talk about two things today, relatively briefly. Right before I started recording today, I got a phone call from a constituent, a friend, somebody I know, typical of many emails and phone calls that we've been getting over the COVID mask issue. And a commentary that I wrote a couple of weeks ago about will our representatives restore representative government? Since that episode, the Speaker of the House and Speaker of the Senate have created a study committee to begin looking, after the primary is over, at the executive powers under the statutes that were passed back in 2000, I believe it was, back when I was in the legislature. And just how much authority does a governor have, and how long can he continue issuing executive orders and kind of controlling the operation of state government. So in my opinion, that's a good thing. It shouldn't be taken as a slam against the governor. The governor's trying to understand and apply the law as he understands it. The legislature's job is to make sure they know what the law is that they've done and whether the people's voice is being represented appropriately, adequately, or there's sufficient checks and balances on the governor's power. So this is the way government works, and so that to me is a good thing, and hopefully they'll take a serious look at what the law is. Oftentimes we pass laws that under the circumstances we don't anticipate how they might be used or how somebody else might interpret them. We saw that not too long ago when the Supreme Court said that the word sex in the 1964 Civil Rights Act for employment discrimination actually meant gender dysphoria and transgender ideology and who you want to have sex with, and just rewrote the law. So it's always good to look back at a law and make sure it says what you think it says, it allows what you think it allows, and that it strikes an appropriate balance between the three branches of government. But one of the questions here is, and there have been issues about school boards, there have been issues about the governor, and the point that I have tried to make, and I want to just outline for people so that they understand how the Constitution of Tennessee works, is the authority of local mayors, which is the title created by statute. Their official constitutional title is a county executive. We actually had a big brouhaha when I was in the legislature. Are they county mayors, county executives? I mean, just the title and how it was worded was a big political issue, within the state and local government. But they're essentially the county executives. We call them county mayors. And the governor authorized the county mayors of 89 counties to decide whether to require the wearing of masks. And some of the counties have done that, and some new counties have done that even recently in, for instance, Rutherford County. And so the question is, does the county mayor have the authority to do that? And hold on a minute, I got to turn my phone off. I forgot. If I'm not careful, the president will be calling or something, and I'll be in a mess. So anyway, the governor authorized the county mayors to do that. The question is, do the county mayors have the authority to do that? So I want to just suggest some things that I think this committee should look at, that county mayors should look at. Because the legislature, the governor, the attorney general, and the county mayors have all taken an oath to uphold the U.S. and the state constitutions. And to be honest, people get elected who have no real understanding of the Constitution. They are not required after they get elected to sit down with a constitutional attorney or constitutional law professors and really get up to speed on what all this is. It's generally, you hope that there are enough experienced heads, good lawyers for the committees, and you rely on them and hope for the best. But a lot of what the governor's been doing has been since session, particularly this delegation of authority to county mayors. So the legislature wasn't there to, call into the committee meeting the legislative legal counsel or the attorney general and those kinds of things. But so I want to give you a couple of principles here. I hope the legislature will look at them. I hope county mayors will think about them. Is that the Constitution says that there are three branches of state government. There's the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. In Article 2 of the Constitution, it says, neither shall exercise any powers of the other. Now, sometimes those lines get a little blurry, as we talked about. We have a bureaucratic state where the legislature authorizes certain things, and then they let the governor, through the various commissioners and departments, create rules and regulations to flesh out the details of them. The same thing happens in Washington, D.C. But you have to be real careful, because you can't say, the governor shall create an education system in Tennessee and then just let him go do whatever he wants to do. You have to provide sufficient objective guidelines, principles by which they can then flesh that out by regulation. So anyway, here are the two things. Couple of general principles people need to appreciate. In the law, when we say that somebody has the power to do something generally, then that power is limited by any specific provision. So, for example, the governor has the authority, clearly under the law, to suspend state laws for the operation of state government. So we've talked about this before. We don't want people sitting in driver license centers, so we're going to suspend the law about renewals. It's not that he's really changed the law. He's just essentially not going to enforce the law, and so keep driving on the expired driver's license. And then when the law resumes, you'll need to get in and get your new driver's license. Now, the law does say, and I want to quote so that nobody is fooled here. There's a provision in the law, 58-2-107, 58-2-107, and in Part A, it says the governor is responsible for addressing the dangers and of emergencies in the event of an emergency beyond local control. So, let's assume it's huge tornadoes, it's major flooding, or it's a pandemic. The governor, or the governor's absence, the governor's successor, as provided by law, may assume direct operational control over all or any part of the emergency management functions within the state. Now, the law under which this is passed created the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency. It was to develop plans and protocols for how to handle emergencies. And this is essentially the provision that says, now, Governor, when this happens, you implement this plan. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've not read that whole plan. It's online. I hadn't bothered to read it. But it goes on, and he says he may assume direct operational control over all or any part of the emergency management functions within the state, and has the power through proper process of law to carry out this chapter. Okay, it still has to be law for the process of this. So you create this plan, the plan's approved, and you carry out the plan. That's according to law. The next sentence says, the governor is authorized to delegate such powers as the governor may deem prudent. Well, if you just take that sentence out, it sounds like the governor can say, well, I think we ought to require everybody to brush their teeth twice a day in the midst of a pandemic, and so I'm going to do that. I'm being facetious there. But the point is, you can delegate powers to carry out the plan. And so, for example, the department that deals with our children in state custody, he could say, look, instead of you making rules about the health of children in state custody, I want the commissioner of health to be the one to decide and tell you what to do in our foster homes and in state whatever. He could say, I want the commissioner of health to tell the commissioner of corrections how to run the health parts of the prison system. That's the powers that are within state government. They're under the executive branch. They deal with the operation of state government, and he can delegate those around. So even if the law says the Commissioner of Corrections shall be responsible for the health and safety and welfare of prisoners in the penal system, the governor can effectively suspend the law and delegate that responsibility to the Commissioner of Health. Great, fine, wonderful. Again, this isn't about whether masks are good or not. This is about whether we're willing to follow the Constitution. Now, there's a specific provision, though, dealing with delegation that deals with local governments. And so, again, when there's a general law, the general law has to be interpreted in light of the more specific law. So, as I was telling a friend the other day, God made me to like and enjoy the company of women. I do. And that's the general rule. And I enjoyed that. Then I had a specific limitation called my marriage license. And so that changed the general ability to me as to how I would enjoy the fellowship of women. That specific controls over the general. So the same thing's true here. So what it says is this. In the same section of the law, instead of paragraph A, in section H, it says, the governor shall delegate emergency responsibilities to the officers and agencies of the state and the political subdivisions thereof, which would be a county government, or a city government, engaged in the, wait a minute, excuse me, I lost my place here. Political subdivisions thereof prior to an emergency or threat of an emergency. Oh, well, we're in the middle of the emergency. Was this delegation made prior to the emergency? Why might it be prior to the emergency? Well, you see, local government's authorities are established by statutes passed by the legislature. A local official has no authority to do what the legislature has not authorized the local official to do. Now, let's look at that for just a moment. The Tennessee Constitution says in Article 7, Section 1, here's what it says. I'm going to quote it to you verbatim. The qualified voters of each county shall elect for terms of 4 years a legislative body, county commission, a county executive, there you go, there's your county mayor, a sheriff, trustee, register of deed, county clerk, and assessor of property. Their qualifications: do you have to have a high school diploma? Do you have to be able to pass an IQ test? Whatever it might be. Their qualifications and duties shall be prescribed by the General Assembly. Now, my argument would be if a county mayor were to ask me, or the governor, as I'd say, Governor, there are lots of things you can do. I'm not quibbling with what you could do. You could require a mask mandate. But can a governor authorize, and can a county executive, just because it's authorized by the governor, can the county mayor say, well, actually my duties are supposed to be prescribed by the General Assembly? I'm not sure there's anything in the act by the legislature that allows you to prescribe new duties or impose duties on me. And to the extent you think you're delegating authorities to me, then those are supposed to be delegated prior to the emergency. Now, I don't remember back in 2010 why it said prior to the emergency. We didn't debate every sentence and every clause, but my guess is local governments have their own responsibilities, their own duties, their own limitations, and they need to be able to say, hey, wait. If you want me to go out here and do this, and the governor wants me to be able to do that, you need to expand the statute over here dealing with county government and expand my authority. And until you do, you can't prescribe a duty to me, because now, as governor, you would be usurping an authority that's specifically constitutionally been given to the General Assembly. And you are not my boss. Now, I don't say that in a derogatory way, but the county executive is a constitutional officer, the same as a sheriff, the same as the county clerk, the same as the governor, same as the comptroller. His boss is the Constitution and the qualified voters of the county. And so I just mentioned that there are some real issues here that need to be examined. Am I trying to point fingers? Am I trying to place blame? Am I trying to say masks are not good or the masks are good? None of that. I'm just asking that we not just blindly go through and say, well, that sounds like a good policy, so let's just do it. We have a constitution. We are a people of laws and not of men. And like I said back on the refugee issue, it's not a question of whether allowing refugees in or out is good or bad. The question is, did the president have the authority to give authority to the governor to make a decision that imposed on the legislature a requirement that it fund the program or the parts of the program the state's responsible for? And so if I'm a county mayor, I'd say, I appreciate it, and this might be really, really good to impose this mandate, but my first priority is to uphold my oath, if you're a Christian, before God, given to the people of my district to uphold the Constitution. And when the legislature gives me the authority as a county mayor to impose a mask mandate, then I'll think about doing that. And when the mandate is done according to law and delegated to me prior to the emergency, so that if state law needs to be changed to mesh with my duties, then I'll do that. But until then, I'm not really sure I should. And I want the legislature to make it clear to me that I can do this because I respect the people that I represent, and I want to honor the oath that I took. And that's what I'm about. Not pointing fingers, not blaming, but friends, we have people in elected office who take an oath to uphold in a constitution, and they don't even know what's in it. And even if they read it, they wouldn't know what the words mean. And that's a problem. And that brings me to the second thing. I want to talk for just a moment about the United States Senate race. Now, we're a state policy council, and I don't endorse candidates. Our organization does not have a PAC, so we do not endorse candidates. But I want to share some thoughts that are very important, I think, to me, at least to me. I hope they will be to you, and I hope they'll be helpful to you about this race between Manny Sethi and Bill Hagerty. I've gotten a lot of emails. Got another one today, and I'd take time to read them, but people are saying, I'm all confused. I was going to vote for this person, and then I got this mail piece that said this, and then I saw this TV commercial that said this, and now I'm confused, and I don't know what to believe. Can you tell me how to evaluate all this? So I want to go through a few things, because friends, the electoral process won't change until we demand that it change. Until we say we're not playing by those old rules of how to campaign, we're not playing that way. And then they'll change. Politicians are not stupid. They give us what they think we want. So let me give a couple of things here. For both camps, I would say, and this sounds strong, and I don't mean it to be terrible, sort of pox on both your houses. Look, I know Manny Sethi a little bit. I did an interview with him. I know Bill Hagerty a little bit. Neither men have I sat down with and had a long, deep, or theological, constitutional discussion. So I'm in some ways no different than the typical voter. But Manny says Bill Hagerty made millions off of, Manny Sethi says, Bill Hagerty made millions off of Common Core. Well, he was on the board of a company that sold textbooks that tied to Common Core. But if he made millions off of it, it would be reported on his tax returns. He got paid $79,000 something for being on the board. The company may have made him a lot of money off of that. And maybe because they made so much money off of it, and maybe because the board was instrumental in helping him know how to sell Common Core textbooks, Bill Hagerty got $79,000 instead of $59,000, but that's not millions. And if he's actually made millions, then Bill Hagerty's defrauded the federal government of income taxes. So that's not good. And to be honest, if Manny's watching this or some of his friends, I would have expected better of you. If you're going to put Christian in your advertisement, almost every time, I expect you to not stretch the truth. Now, Bill Haggerty, again, I don't know him very well, but he's taken a $50 contribution that Manny Sethi made to a friend of his running for office. $50. Now, friends, that will win you an election. When you've got a donor that's willing to pony up $50 for you, why, you're in. You're in. Friend or no friend, you're a major player in that campaign. Of course not. But he went to make the contribution, and the online processing form ran it through some Democratic platform thing. Now, I'm sure that candidate actually got his $50, or maybe that candidate paid a skim off the top. You provide the processing of this, and you get 10%, just like credit cards get 3 or 4% of everything you put on the credit card. They take back from the merchant. Maybe that happened. But that's not a communist who supports socialism and Bernie Sanders and all that stuff. Pox on your house too, Bill Haggerty. Now, friends, why do we have candidates like that? Because we haven't insisted on better ones. They're both misrepresenting the situation because they think to win, you have to make the other guy look really bad. Now, here's another thing. I found out that Manny Sethi's campaign manager, or whoever it is, that's his consultant, some guy, I don't know his name, that he was a never Trumper, and he's got all these Facebook posts and pages out there. What am I supposed to make of that? Well, I don't know. Here's what I would make of it. Had a good friend of mine call me from Colorado a few years ago, said this great, wonderful Christian guy was running for the United States Congress, and he hired somebody that in his personal life was terribly liberal, but yet still was within the Republican Party kind of concept, probably a fiscal conservative and social liberal. He said, man, what are you doing? And he said, well, he's the best campaign manager in the area for knowing how to win a campaign. Yeah, but his views are, and he said, look, I got to win. And I can't sit here and say, I need to know if you're a 5-point Calvinist or you're dispensational, and I need to know what your eschatology is, and how do you interpret this verse of the Bible? Well, I'm sorry, I can't hire you for my campaign manager. No, we want somebody that can win campaigns. You don't go out and say, I need the most principled campaign guy I can find, and he says, I'm it. I put a Bible verse on every mail piece, every letter, every commercial, and you know what? I haven't won an election in 10 years, but you want a principled campaign consultant that doesn't know how to win? I'm your guy. And boy, a lot of people are going to rush to that guy. We don't have enough good people to serve as campaign managers and advisors. And then the candidates, because they're the experts, rely on them. It's just a mess. And you know what? The mess is the church's fault. Let's just put it there. Both of these candidates, how they're going to govern, I believe, will turn on who they surround themselves with. Because I personally don't think either of these guys really know enough about the Constitution and how it's to function and the common law foundation behind it to understand the concept of law that's found in the Constitution, the concept of rights that are found in the Constitution. I don't think that they're any more competent than anybody else we got in state government for the most part. And maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they will get out and say, David, let's have a constitutional debate before the primary. And if so, I'm going to ask them to explain the Obergefell decision, the Rule of Law Life Act, and why we passed a laddered abortion bill, and why other states are passing all kinds of crazy things. And we'll just see how they do. So it's going to depend on who they surround themselves with. And then the second thing is going to depend on whether they have enough wisdom and discernment and enough basic knowledge to know this person who's going to be my chief legal counsel comes from this kind of worldview and understanding of the Constitution and judicial supremacy, and this person comes from this perspective, and they don't say, oh, well, this guy goes to first most evangelical church in Tennessee, and his pastor is the Right Reverend I know it all, and he teaches the Sunday school class, And he's a member of the Rotary and the Kiwanis Club. So I'm going to pick him to be my chief legal counsel. And you know what? He may be over here opposing the Rule of Law Life Act and the Common Law Marital Contract Recording Act because he has a wrong understanding of law and the Constitution. So friends, when you feel a little despair, I feel a little despair. Because I see the inner part of this. And we need to do better, particularly as Christians. And I'm committed for us trying to do better. It may take us 5 or 10 or 15 years to have the kind of candidates that people like me would be proud of. Like you would be proud of. But that's what we need to do. And you need to make the choice based on what you think about who these people will surround themselves and whether they have the discernment to even know who best to surround themselves with. Let me say one other little thing about this campaign. When Bill Lee ran for governor, some of the candidates got really negative on him, just like Manny and Bill Hagerty are doing. And I remember listening to a commercial. I saw it on my phone. And it was Bill Lee, and he was sitting there, and he was calm, and he said, man, all these people are attacking me. And I'm just not going down that road. That's not who I am. I finished watching that, and I called my wife, and I said, Bill Lee just won this election. And you know what? He did. Because he didn't go down that path. And I would say to both to Manny and to Bill Hagerty, we're looking for people who have the integrity of saying, I want to tell you who I am and what I stand for and what I believe. And no, I don't want me to tell me about just all your mission trips and how you teach Sunday school. I want to know how you think about the Constitution and the separation of powers and the limits of the judicial power and the differences of federalism and the importance of dual sovereignty. And I want to understand why it is you think those things are important and why those things are even in our form of government. And then I'll know that you're competent. And when you take the oath, you know what it is you're doing. And then you can represent me. So, friends, vote however you want. But my advice today is, we as Christians, we need to clean up our act. And we need to say we need to have as godly and as theologically strong candidates as possible. Campaign advisors, campaign managers, campaign consultants, male peace producers as we possibly can, and get off our pietistic high horse about how I've never had an adulterous affair and I don't smoke and I don't drink and I didn't even go to a school dance. Okay. Well, I wish Gary had been here today because I got kind of fired up, as you can tell. Here's the good news, and I'll close with this. God has not abdicated his throne. He is still good. He is still righteous. And he is in control. And with that, I can rest in peace. Thanks for listening today. Hope to see you next week. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your friends to subscribe too. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. God, Law, and Liberty is a podcast of the Family Action Council of Tennessee. We are a 100% supporter-funded nonprofit advocating for family, life, marriage, and religious liberty. For more information, please visit us at www.facttennessee.org. That's facttennessee.org. And please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram @FactTennessee.